Welcome to the France Campus Tour 2024. Today we are at the ESSEC Business School campus and I'm super excited to be here back again because this is where I pursued my masters in management a few years ago. ESSEC is a very popular business school and is consistently ranked as one of the top institutions here. Today we are going to interview Abhishek Agarwal, an alumni of this business school. He pursued the masters in management program here and is going to share his honest experiences with us today. So, let's get this started. So, Abhishek, like the first and the foremost question that everyone asked me, and I think would have asked you as well, was why France? Like, why did you choose to come to France when, like, most Indian kids end up going to the UK or the US?
Yeah, so I had decided that I wanted to do an MBA right after my graduation. But when I started researching about it, talking to people, I realized that was really difficult for me because I had just graduated. I really did not have any experience. So the next best option for me to go and do a master's degree in management was it for me. So I had decided that okay, now I need to do an MIM. And when I started looking at MIM programs, I realized that most of the top MIM programs are here in France, and on top of that there are other benefits as well. So France is very student friendly. You get a lot of benefits like apprenticeship, a lot of support by the government in terms of social security and other things, which make France the obvious choice for you.
So, the next and the other important question that students ask a lot is that whether masters in management is worth it and is it a good alternative to an MBA?
Yeah, so in my opinion, that's definitely true. It's a really good option for you if you don't have a lot of experience to go do an MBA, because I would say it is very similar to an MBA in terms of the curriculum, the things you learn. It's just that you and your class might not be very much experienced, and you come with an open mind, and you on the program will decide what you want to study, what you want to build your career in. And to answer the question of whether it's worth it or not, so that really depends on what you want to get out of it. So for me, it was definitely worth it because eventually I got a job in consulting, which is exactly what I wanted to do. And a lot of my friends as well, they got jobs in finance and consulting, marketing at the top companies in France, in Europe, and in other countries as well. So I would say, yeah, it's definitely worth it.
I guess from my perspective, it's worth it if you end up at a top B school like ESSEC or one of the top 20 in the world. In that case, like the partnerships that they have and the reputation that they enjoy in Europe is so good that you do end up getting all the benefits that the MBA students of the same university have. Right. So, since ESSEC is like one of the best institutes in France, it is extremely competitive to get into this particular program, which is Grand École or the Masters in Management. So, Abhishek, can you please tell me how did you manage to get in?
Yeah, so for me particularly, since I had no work experience and I was an engineer Indian, which is like the profile of a lot of students, international students at least, who are applying, one thing I did was that I really focused on getting a good GMAT score. And after some hard work, I could manage to get a 730, which is a good GMAT score, which first helps you differentiate from a big pool of applicants. That's one. Second, and the most important thing, is the application itself. So from what I think, for international schools, and most importantly French business schools and ESSEC, it's really about how you represent yourself in your essays, your LORs, and everything. So it's not about less about what you actually have done, but more about how you can relate that to the program you're applying to, the school you're applying to, how it will help you achieving what you eventually want to. So the most important thing is what you write in your essays, how you represent yourself, how you build your story, and how you connect it to the school or the program that you're applying to.
Having said that, can you tell me how important is the GMAT score?
Yes, so GMAT score is definitely very important, but it if even if you don't have a really good GMAT score, you can offset that by doing something else really good. So maybe you didn't get a really good GMAT score, but you had really good scores in your undergrad, or you did really good work outside your studies, you started a company, or you had a really good work experience. That would help. On the flip side, if you didn't have a lot of work experience like I did, I had a generic profile, I offset that by getting a really good GMAT score. So it's not a typical application where you need to get this score to get in, but really build a very holistic application where you need to excel at a lot of things. So it could be GMAT, it could be a it could be things outside your work and study, it could be anything, but you really need to show that you are an excellent student and you will fit into the school really well.
That's I think that's exactly what I did. I was horrible with my GMAT score, I would say, and what I managed to do was get a lot of work ex and a lot of very good work experience. And it was my story around work ex and all the other extracurriculars that I'd done, which actually got me in. Maybe for you it was a GMAT score. So it's not really one thing that can get you into a school. It's really your entire profile and the story that you present along with that. right? So Abhishek, you mentioned apprenticeship, and I think that's the highlight of anyone's experience at ESSEC Business School, and it's a very interesting concept. So let's understand from him what exactly it is.
Yeah, so apprenticeship is something very similar to an internship or a job. The only difference is that this is a contract between three parties. So it will be you, your school, and the company.
Okay.
And the way it works is that for half of the time of the contract, you're studying at your school, and for the other half, you're working with the company. It and what are the benefits that you get as a student is that first you get a monthly stipend or a salary, which, for example, for ESSEC, the average was around 1,500 euros, which is really good amount to cover your living expenses. And the second one is that the company pays off your entire tuition fee. So, and how that helps you is that you graduate debt free. So for my particular example, when I graduated, I had zero debt. I had good amount of savings. I had a really good experience at ESSEC because I could live in the center of Paris. I could travel a lot. I've been to multiple countries in Europe. And on top of that, I had 2 years of solid work experience at one of the investment banks, which really helped me land my full time job. So all in all, apprenticeship really sets you up for your career, and while doing that, it also really helps you financially as well.
So what he means to say is that it was a work study program where the tuition fee was completely paid by the company he joined, right? And he also got like solid work experience at a investment bank. Now, can you explain to us how is an apprenticeship different from an internship?
Yeah, so at an internship, we are working full time with a company for a short duration of time. So I also did an internship in the beginning of my program. Right after 6 months, I did an internship with another investment bank for 3 months. For those 3 months, I was working full time with this company, day in day out. But in an apprenticeship, it was a longer contract. It was a 2 year contract where half the time I was studying, and for the remaining half, I was working for the company. So internship is a bit different because you're working full time. It has no relationship with the school. However, in an apprenticeship, your school is involved in the contract as well, and you're supposed to work and study at the same time.
Oh, got it. So can you tell me if this apprenticeship is offered for all the programs or was it specific to your particular program?
So at ESSEC, for at least, or and in fact for most of the French business schools, master's management, or how is it called in French, Grand École, that is their flagship program, which is the most important, most prestigious one. So that is the only program which offers an apprenticeship. On top of that, most of the French business schools, from what I know, they offer apprenticeship only for French speaking students, and ESSEC is the only one which also allows international students to do an apprenticeship. However, from what I know, there are other schools, business schools in France, which are also starting to offer apprenticeship for international students. Maybe you would know more about that than I know.
Yes, that's true. I mean, after following ESSEC, a lot of other business schools have also started offering this option to internationals. And I mean, it's the best thing if you have a funding problem and you don't want to drown yourself in a lot of debt. Like this is the best way to get an education at a top institute, especially in France. Okay, so now let's talk about the most important question, and which is something a lot of students keep asking me: how difficult or easy was it to land an internship?
Yeah. So to make it easier for so everyone in my batch who wanted an internship or an apprenticeship, they got one.
Okay.
However, it is definitely not easy. It is indeed very difficult. And one of the reasons that makes it really difficult is that most of the internships or apprenticeships, they need you to speak French. So for my first internship, I had to make around 200 applications to get it. However, what helps is that once you get your first internship, the experience here in France that helps you get your next one. So for an apprenticeship, I had to do maybe a bit fewer application, and it was a bit easier. I could get a better role. But the key here is that you need to be strategic. You need to figure out the companies which hire most English speaking students. You need to apply earlier. You need to start as early as possible. I started applying to my first internship as soon as I landed here, and once I started my internship, I started applying for apprenticeships right away. So that is the way you can go about it. However, just to reiterate it again, it is not easy, but it is not impossible. And on top of that, coming from ESSEC, the reputation of ESSEC, at least in France and in Europe, that really helps you to land your first internships and subsequent other internships or apprenticeships going further as well.
Okay, that's the thing, right? So I think all of us in our batch ended up getting an internship or an apprenticeship, whatever they were looking for. But no, it was not easy for sure. But it was not impossible because everyone at the end of the day had something, that they wanted to do. Now, another question that a lot of students keep asking me is whether internships are paid because, like in India, they don't really pay you well. So how is the structure of an internship here?
Yeah, so here internships pay really well. So if you're doing an internship, in most cases, you can manage your living expenses for those months definitely very easily. Even for apprenticeships, you get paid really well. So if you're doing an internship or an apprenticeship, you can manage your living expenses really well. I had a lot of friends who just did few internships and manage it strategically to cover at least their living expenses of the entire program. So internships do pay really well, and once you do one, so your first internship might pay well, and the one after that might pay even further really well. So you can manage it like that, and once you do more and more internships, you go from better and better companies and you will make good amount of money.
That's true. That's true. I mean, the first is always difficult, but once you have that international experience, right, in France, the other companies start trusting you easily, and you get an internship. Not, I wouldn't say very easily, but still, like you don't have to make as many applications, right? Okay, so is it the same for jobs as well?
Yeah, so for getting a job after you graduate, I would say it is kind of similar, because the English speaking roles which are limited in France, and you would need to work similarly hard for getting a job like you did, like I mentioned, for internships. You will have to make a lot of applications, you'll have to start a bit earlier and work really hard. However, from what I see, a lot of my batchmates, they are not really in France. They went to different countries. Like I mentioned earlier, ESSEC is very well reputed in Europe, so you can go to any other English speaking country. You can go to UK, you can go to Scandinavian countries, you can go to Middle East, anywhere where ESSEC is reputed and anywhere you can find a job where your skills are valued, you can move there. Apart from that, one other thing that I have noticed is that you can really find out jobs which don't need you to speak French. So for example, working in finance, working in operations, these kind of roles don't really need you to speak French, unless you want to work in the front office to interact with clients or interact with customers. You don't really need to speak French in order to get a job here. So
Right.
that is one other thing that you could do here, and I have seen also a lot of my batchmates do.
Mhm.
But in all, to answer your question, it is difficult to get a job after graduation here, but it's not impossible. And all of or most of my batchmates have found something that they wanted and they liked. So it is indeed definitely possible.
Yes, that's true. I mean, most of our classmates are at, top companies working at very good positions. And this has happened for them because they had all this experience of internships, apprenticeships. They've done like multiple internships, and, they made that, I think, they made like this career trajectory for them to end up getting a job. So it was not that they came to ESSEC, they studied and directly, went to look for jobs. They actually, got some international experience first to get that, right?
Yeah, in that sense, like I mentioned, the curriculum and the flexibility at ESSEC really helps you, because while you're studying, you got interested in finance, so you would do an internship, you would do a second internship, maybe you'll do an apprenticeship. So you gain experience in exactly what you want to do after graduation, and that is not just limited to one experience. You'll do multiple internships, maybe in different countries, maybe at different companies. So that kind of international experience and exposure really sets you up to get a really good job after graduation. So that really helps. That kind of flexibility which ESSEC offers is really helpful to get a job after graduation.
Exactly, makes sense. But can you tell us, how did you end up getting like a very coveted role, in consulting? Because everyone knows how difficult it is to get into like a leading consulting firm. How did you manage to do that? That too in Dubai.
Yeah, so for me, the way it went was that I knew that I wanted to do consulting. And like I mentioned, it is a front office role, which really needs you to interact with clients. So I knew that to find that in France, at least, would be a bit difficult, because I would have to speak French. And I particularly did not want to learn a new language. So in that case, I recognized that Middle East is a leading market for consulting. There's a lot of new projects coming up. So I shortlisted that as one of the geographies that I wanted to explore. On top of that, like I mentioned, ESSEC is very well reputed amongst consulting firms in the Middle East. So my company organized a recruiting event for top business schools in France, including HEC, ESSEC, and ESCP. So they invited all the students from these top business schools for networking events. They had a special application session for us, and I conducted my interviews in the Paris office for my consulting firm, and that's how I got the job.
Okay, so that's interesting. So the thing is that most Indians are like super scared because here at international schools you don't have placements, right? But they do have something like this, which is which you can say is like a partnership with top B schools. So let's say top consulting companies or top investment banks have like partnerships with top B schools in each country, and they do, come here for seminars. I think we had a lot of such career fairs and seminars, and they would take your CVs. You can network with them, and if they like your profile, they would actually invite you for an interview. And that's how he got his job, and a lot of our classmates did as well. So you don't need to worry so much about not having like a placement kind of structure here at an international school.
Yeah, so even if you don't have such placement committees like we have in Indian B schools or any other Indian schools, you do have these career fairs, a lot of information sessions, a lot of speaker sessions coming in. So that really helps first to get the job, to network, to not just get a job, but to explore these different companies, to speak with representatives, to understand what different kind of careers could look like. So that really helps you. Second, it really helps you develop yourself personally, because just getting a job through a placement committee might be easy to get the job, but to really put yourself out there, to network, to look for jobs through LinkedIn, by applying, to visit different companies, all these things that really help in the long term. So once you're out of that school, at some other point you might have to look for a job again. True. And at that point, all these experience, all of these efforts will really come in handy. So I would not say that not having a placement committee is a drawback. I would rather see it as a benefit.
A positive.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, Abhishek looks at it as a positive, and I think I agree, because this is not the only time you're going to be looking for job. Like maybe your B school in India can get you a job, and which is superb. I mean, that's a great concept, and I wish everyone had it. But if let's say if it's not the case, it's not that bad as well, because it's preparing you for the future. All right, that's great. And now let's just talk about the other programs here at France, because I guess we focused a lot on MIM, which we did, which is the flagship program. But can you tell if this business school particularly is good for any other programs, and if it is, which ones?
Yeah, so at ESSEC you have a lot of other programs, so MIM of course, but apart from that, the Master in Finance program is really good. They have a MBA program which is highly coveted as well. In terms of MBA, I think there is also specialization in subjects like luxury management on things like that, which is a bit particular to ESSEC, and that's a really good course as well. You also have some courses for more experienced people, which is called SMIB, I think, which is Strategy Management for International Business. And also the global BBA program at ESSEC is really good. And one of the good things about that is that you can do an apprenticeship as a BBA student as well. So instead of doing your undergrad in India, you can do a BBA at ESSEC as well.
Oh, so what he's saying is that there are very good master's programs as well, but there is a particular program which is BBA for undergrad students, where there is this apprenticeship that they offer. So if you're someone who wants to pursue a bachelor's degree in France, then maybe you want to look into this BBA program. All right. So Abhishek, today's agenda is to give a very honest view of this school. What are the pros, what are the cons, and what are the expectations that students should have before coming to the school? So let's first get started with the pros. Like what are the best things about this school?
Yes, I would say there are multiple benefits of EdSec. First one, I would say the flexibility. So every trimester, you get to choose which courses you would want to study. So there's a long list of around 200 courses. You could choose courses from sports to luxury, from management to finance, anything. So that's one. So coming as a fresher who was an engineer, it was really helpful for me to decide, okay, at which point of time, what do I want to study? To add on that, in terms of flexibility, you also get to choose when do you want to do an internship and where do you want to work. After one trimester, maybe I want to apply whatever I learned in finance and do an internship, so I can do that. Maybe I want to continue studying, I can do that. So it's totally up to me what I want to do at what point of time. Second one would be the partnerships that ESSEC has. So ESSEC has a lot of double degree programs, a lot of exchange programs as well. So there are a lot of MBA exchange programs as well with top MBA schools in the US. To give you some examples, Kellogg, Chicago Booth, Haas Business School at UC Berkeley. So all the top business schools that you would be able to think of. Third one, and the most important one, I would say, is the apprenticeship program, which ESSEC offers to not just French students but also to international students, which lets you pay off your tuition fees while you're studying and also gain some work experience while you're studying as well. So I would say, yeah, these are the most important benefits that ESSEC offers you.
That's great. That's great. I mean, I can keep going on and on about this, but let's now, talk about the cons. Like, what are the drawbacks of coming to ESSEC?
Yes, in terms of drawbacks, first one that I could think of is that you would imagine that ESSEC Business School is in Paris, which is not really the case. It's in a town called Cergy, which is like an hour away from ESSEC. So it it makes up a commute. If you want to visit Paris, that will become difficult. But having said that, what is also important is that Cergy, it's not Paris. It's in the outskirts, so it's not as expensive as Paris. So being a student, it's really easy for you to find an accommodation here. It's cheaper than Paris. So it's pros and cons in the same point. Apart from that, what I could think of is about the diversity. So at ESSEC, I had expected classes to be a bit more diverse. However, what it turned out to be was mostly French students, Indian students, and Chinese students, with some international students who were mostly exchange students. So that is a bit of a drawback, as coming to an international business school, you would expect the classes to be a bit more diverse. Apart from that, one other drawback I could see is the need of the language. So like any other European school, you need to speak French to excel here, to participate in all the activities which are outside your courses or your classes, to really make friends here, to get more opportunities in terms of work or outside work as well. So you really need to speak French. But again, having said that, that is a problem with France in general and not particular to ESSEC. In fact, coming from ESSEC, because it's so very well reputed, not only in France but in across all Europe, it really helps you cross that barrier. So even if there are very limited English speaking jobs, coming from ESSEC, it really opens up that door for you to really get those jobs, because it is so very well reputed.
Exactly. Like, I mean, there are very few English speaking jobs in France, but most of them go to like students from top business schools only. So, if you want to come to France, you'd rather come to like the top 5 or 10 business schools only, because most of the jobs end up going to these, students. That's great. So, tell me about part time jobs. So, like, because language is a barrier, were you able to do part time jobs?
So if you would think of the typical part-time jobs which students do in the US or UK, like working at supermarkets or restaurants or things like that, that I would say, in my opinion at least, and from what I saw among my peers, it was impossible. Like, I don't know anyone who did that, because you need to speak French to interact with people, and none of us would. So one thing that I saw people do was babysitting, which was again very very limited. But apart from that, what you could actually do is work at the school itself. So there are some opportunities for working as a like a teaching assistant, a research assistant, which I did as well. You could help your professors doing some research, help them with their courses, help them prepare the material, grade papers, things like that. And apart from that, you can also work with a lot of student clubs, because at ESSEC we had a consulting club which takes on real consulting projects. So I worked with them part time to support their research and their projects. I gained some real consulting experience, and I get paid for doing that as well. So that is one way that you can make some extra money by working part time.
Is there anything else that you would want to share with our students?
Yeah, so this was a real pleasure. Thank you for having me. The last thing I would say is that when I came to France and when I started my journey at ESSEC, I was also really anxious. It was all really overwhelming. So for anyone else who is going to start this journey anytime soon, I would say that just keep doing what you know are the right things to do. Just keep working hard and don't forget your goals. Just keep at it, and it will all fall in place eventually.
That's true. That's true. That has been the case with almost all our batchmates. And yeah, that's all for today. I hope you liked today's video. We have also visited several other top business school campuses in France, so do check it out on our channel Edu Abroad with Bijal. For all those seeking help to get into top business schools in France or across the world, feel free to reach out to us here. Website link is in the caption.